Pause. Recording. Great. Our recording is started. And I'm happy to have everyone here today. Welcome to all of our pre-law students and pre-law advisors and other interested persons. My name is Barbara Kirby. I am the treasurer of the Southwest Association of Pre-Law Advisors, and we are an organization that is made up of pre-law professionals. We all work at universities in assisting our students on their journey towards law school. We have within SWAPLA in our organization a lot of law school partners who help us and assist us in providing the best advice that we can to our students. So I also have today monitoring the chat two of our other officers, Anna Alvarez of University of Texas at San Antonio, and Lori DeKalb, who is the pre-law advisor at the University of Oklahoma, our sister state to the north of Texas. And Anna and Lori will be monitoring the chat. So if you have any questions that arise during our discussion, feel free to put them in the Q&A, and we will either answer them right away or at the point in time later when we have our question and answer, we'll bring them forward to everyone. We have a fantastic panel here that is going to talk about how to get the most out of one of the virtual LSAC forums. We have two of our law school associates. We have one of our distinguished pre-law professionals, and we have our ambassador from LSAC. I'm going to give the briefest of introductions to them. I usually just love to read people's resumes off and talk about how great they are. But in the interest of time, I'm going to let each of my wonderful friends introduce themselves. I will just tell you briefly, we have, first of all, Catherine Cassiano from Law School Admissions at St. Mary's University in San Antonio. We have Alicia Kramer from Law School Admissions at South Texas College of Law. Lady Stacy Rimes Boyd, who is a pre-law advisor at Trinity University, also in San Antonio. And then we have Katja Lsac, who is the LSAC Ambassador, who will be talking today about how to navigate. So first, I'm going to have each give a little deeper introduction, talk about their universities and what they do, and give kind of a brief thought about the forums. And then we'll go from there to Katja, who will give us the demonstration about how to navigate the forum. So let's start with Catherine Cassiano from St. Mary's.
Good afternoon. So nice to see you all, and thank you for joining us. I'm excited to be here and talk with you all. So my name is Catherine Cassiano. I'm the Assistant Dean of Admissions here at St. Mary's in San Antonio. I know Dean Kramer and I are going to dig a little deeper in a little bit into what we think you should take out of the forums. So I'll go ahead and pass it over to her.
Sorry, I was taking a drink of water, and it really is water. I'm in the office. So good afternoon. My name is Alicia Kramer. I am the Assistant Dean of Admissions here at South Texas College of Law, Houston. I'm excited to be here today. Catherine and I chatted a little bit yesterday about what we thought would be important to bring to your attention. So we're excited about being able to do that. And excited for the opportunity for you guys. Virtual can be just as relevant as in person. So I hope we're able to convey that message to you today so that if you need or want to do virtual, it makes more sense and is more beneficial. So thank you for having me.
Okay, Lady Stacy, why don't you tell us about yourself?
Hello, everyone. I'm Lady Stacy Rhymes Boyd, and I wear a couple of hats at Trinity University. I'm an assistant director of programming and marketing within the Career Services Office, but I'm vice chair of the Pre-Law Advisory Committee on our campus. And so I regularly meet with students to talk to them about their potential law school aspirations and help them to navigate their pathway. I'm excited to chat with you today about the LSAC Forum because I love the forums. I went to one way back in 1998, and so I always advise students to utilize this wonderful resource.
Thank you. Great members of our panel. And, you know, I'll throw in there, I've been going to the in-person forum for some time, but it is really amazing the opportunity that students can have from the virtual forum to be able to visit law schools that they might not even have thought about being able to visit and talk with representatives in person. So let's go to Katja then. Katja is our LSAC ambassador. Tell us a little bit about your role and what you're going to share with us today about the forum.
Absolutely. I'm so excited to be here with all of you and my colleagues in the pre-law and law school admissions world. I came to LSAC at the end of last November after almost a decade in law school admissions. So last year I was on the other side of the table. I actually attended as a law school rep. And so it was a whole new world last year. None of us knew what to expect. And so I'm very excited to give you all a sneak peek into everything you'll be able to do when you attend, hopefully this Friday. So after you register for the forum, any of the digital forums, you will get information to log into a site called vFairs. And when you log in, I'm going to share my screen so you all can see. You will enter the forum in the lobby of our event. Now, actually, there's a pop-up video with a welcome video just to get you oriented. But once you finish watching that, you will have the ability to click through various things in the forum. I want to start by showing you the ways in which you can find a law school, whether you know exactly who you want to speak to or if you just want to browse around. So there's a number of ways to do that. You can click on a list of participating law schools. That will open up a window that can show you the state that the school is located in and then their exhibit hall. And then you can just navigate back to the forum and click on the fair or click on the exhibit hall that corresponds to the name of the law school. Or if you know you specifically want to chat with the admissions and law school representatives from South Texas, you can type in South Texas, start typing in the name, and then if you click on the school when it comes up, you'll be taken directly to that school's booth. And at the booth, you'll see there's a lot of information. You'll be able to chat with them in the chat that's provided by the vFairs platform. You'll be able to read a description of the school, watch any videos that they may have uploaded for you to review, and click on any of their documents. You can review them right during the event, or you can add them to your swag bag where you'll be able to access them later. You will see most schools will have some sort of Zoom link that will allow you to have one-on-one conversations in real time, face to face, if you want to do more than just chat. Another way, if you just want to explore, that was exploring way too far. Hold please. I apologize for that. Okay. If you want to just explore through the exhibit halls, you can click on an exhibit hall color. It will take you to all the schools that are in that particular hall. They're randomly assigned. So you can do one of two things. You can scroll through the exhibit hall, see what catches your eye, or you can come to this list here and scroll and see who might catch your eye in that way. And oh, look, St. Mary's is in the Turquoise Hall. So again, if you click on their booth, you'll be able to see information about the school, add the documents to your swag bag, chat, or connect via Zoom. So this is the primary way in which you will be able to find and connect with law schools during the event. There is so much more than just the law school booths though. So if you go back to the lobby, you can see that there's something called the Resource Center. If you go to the Resource Center, you're going to get some basic information about a number of different areas that are related to the law school application and admissions process. There's a tile that will take you to information at the LSAC resource table. This is where you can learn about all the services that the LSAC offers to help you succeed in your law school journey, and you'll get insights about the admissions process. We have a link for diversity resources. This booth will be staffed by representatives from LSAC's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion team. They'll be available to answer any questions that you may have. We have a pre-law advisement booth. This is staffed by volunteer pre-law advisors. Some volunteers may be on this call right now, and those advisors are available to answer questions to help you start preparing for your law school journey. You know, what to expect in terms of what the process is going to entail, what you should be doing during your undergraduate years, maybe offer advice about ways in which you can strengthen your application. You'll have the opportunity to talk one-on-one with the pre-law volunteers. Event information. This is just an overview of the day. It'll give you the schedule, the list of participating schools, the ability to register for in-person forums. So again, this is just general information, a lot of which you may already know just from clicking around or from registering for the event itself. We have a booth that's specifically geared towards our LSAC Law Hub services and LSAT information. Here, you'll be able to speak with an actual LSAT test developer. You'll get questions. You'll be able to get answers to your questions about testing accommodations, what to expect on the LSAT. And you'll also be able to learn about Law Hub, and that is one of our free test prep platforms that we offer, as well as Prep Plus, which is a subscription service. You'll also be able to ask any questions that you might have about test day or LSAT writing. We have a financial aid booth. This is staffed by financial aid experts who, like the pre-law advisement table, will be able to answer your questions and provide advice based on your situation. And then I don't know that this will be terribly relevant to this group. If you are someone who is looking for an LLM or some other graduate program in law, maybe a certificate program or a master's program, we have information about those different programs at this particular booth. And then anyone who's interested in legal education in Canada will likely find their way to the Canadian Candidate Interest booth. Okay, so that is what is going to be available at the Resource Center. And there's a number of ways to get there. I brought us there by clicking on the link here. But there's also a link along the top of the page. And you'll see that there's often a lot of duplication to get you from place to place. It is fairly intuitive. So once you get in and click around for a little bit, you'll hopefully get oriented relatively quickly. The last thing I wanted to share is the auditorium. So we have a number of digital workshops that you'll be able to attend. We have an LLM workshop, one about the USJD application process. We have a diversity information panel, a Canadian connections workshop, one that's about the LSAT, and one that's about other graduate law programs. And if you click on it right now, you won't be able to access any of them, but you can see the schedule. We have a countdown going until they all begin. And so these are the live workshops that you'll be able to attend on this Friday if you attend the forum. But we also have a number of on-demand workshops that you could view immediately if you wanted to. These are more general pre-recorded presentations. The live events, as the name indicates, will be live. We have admissions professionals and individuals from the broader pre-law community and LSAC staffing and helping us with that. So that is a quick overview of everything that we are making available to you on all of the digital forums. If you get lost when you sign in, we do have the information desk here. You can always start your process there. I am happy to answer any questions when we get to the Q&A, and I'll keep an eye on the chat for now. But that is a quick overview of everything that you'll see when you log in on Friday or attend any of the other upcoming digital forums that we have.
And the other 2 digital forums are in December, is that right?
December and then February of 2022.
Oh, okay, so there's one for February as well. Well, let's hear about the people behind those desks. Let's start with you, Kathy. So what's your experience been like being one of those avatars in the virtual law school fair?
So, I mean, I think it looks a little overwhelming, I'll say that right now, but when you get into it, it's not. And so you can imagine us when they told us last year, you're going from in person, standing and talking to people, to all of a sudden you have to create a digital booth. And I personally was like, oh my goodness, I don't understand what that means. But as you saw what Katja just showed, it's amazing. Like the technology, I think, is fantastic. It gives you the feel like you're really there. So when Dean Kramer and I talked yesterday about what we thought were sort of the points that are important to share with you all are the fact that, you know, you may not know what questions to ask, but that's okay. There will be plenty of people who will be there with already a list of questions, but there'll be other people on the other hand who aren't sure what to ask. And it's a really good opportunity to just sort of dive into the booths and have access to the people that can really answer those questions from firsthand experience. It's definitely not the same as in person, but I think it does give you a lot of opportunity to really meet and greet and talk with people, all from the comfort of your own home, which is just fantastic. So that's kind of sort of what Dean Kramer and I are going to sort of go back and forth and just kind of talk about the things that we really think are important for you to think about, consider, not be shy about. And so I'll go ahead and turn it over to Dean Kramer to talk about some of the other points we sort of had talked about.
So, you know, the beauty of this is what people are pointing out is, you know, sometimes when you're in person, you don't get to get as far around the room as you might like. And I think in this virtual digital format, you can probably make tracks a lot faster, actually. There's no long line usually to wait behind Yale's table because they're in a booth, or Harvard, or whoever was the most popular at a forum. And so if you think about it, take advantage of this in that, first of all, expand your horizons, right? Don't go to Yale and Harvard singly, because there's a lot of law schools out there that, unbeknownst to you, might be able to meet some of the expectations or things that you're looking for. I know the pre-law advisors on this call probably try to tell you guys that all the time. You know, how do you know that the school you've never heard of, or the one that, you know, whatever, might not be the best fit? So take advantage of the opportunity of the availability of all of us. And what I really appreciate about this is the chat feature or the Zoom feature. Many of us have set up the ability to do Zooms. So it's really almost like being in person, except, as Catherine points out, Dean Cassiano, you can be at home in your PJs and it's all good. So take advantage of, you know, digging deep. Thinking about, you know, I've never heard of this school. Let me look at all of the things that they have in their booth. Maybe I'll hop on a chat. Maybe I prefer to Zoom. We laughed yesterday. The two things that I would suggest about Zooming is that imagine if you're in our offices or at a table, right? So maybe don't be lounging in bed as you're, trying to ask a question. Perhaps you could be in a chair. That would be nice. And also put your video on. If we're Zooming, I really want to see a face. I'm going to let you see mine. I'd love to see yours. And so, if you ask to Zoom, let's have a connection. Otherwise, and if you don't want to do Zoom, or you're not comfortable, or you don't have the capability, the chat is right there. And as Dean Cassiano kind of mentioned, in an in-person forum, we are very limited in the number of people that we can have available, right? 1 or 2. And because of the expense, we've all kind of gone back to 1. And so in many times a booth, you might have the dean of admissions, the director of admissions, a couple of students, an alum, who knows? But it's going to be neat because you will have the opportunity to engage and chat or Zoom with the variety of people in the booth versus just maybe the one that you might have been able to talk with at an in-person fair. So it's an interesting and wonderful opportunity. And so those would be some of the things that we wanted to make you think about.
I think additionally, some of the, and to be clear, you can look at the schedule. So if you look at the booths, a lot of times there are schedules that will tell you who has different speakers at what time. So I know, for example, we have a student coming to talk and share their perspective. So you really can kind of click around in the booths and see who's going to be available at what time, so that you can know, okay, maybe I want to come back and talk with Dean Kramer at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, whatever the case is. I can totally see, and it already happens when I look in my booth, I get lost in all of the information that's in there. So definitely take your time. There's videos on the booths, different brochures. The swag bag feature is so nice because you can kind of tuck it in there and go back later. It's like when at the in-person forums, you see people lugging around their bags of information, and I'm like, are you really gonna read all those brochures? But they go back and scan, and like anybody else, once you pick up information, you take your time and you sort of peruse it when it's most convenient for you. So I think that's a particularly nice feature of those digital booths. And I think the other thing is kind of just scrolling around and just to see based on the pictures or the text. I think we've all been very, very judicious, right? And trying to pick the things that we think you all as pre-law students want to know about. So definitely, and if you don't know, like some of the pictures, you can click on it, that takes you to links. As we were putting the pictures on, I'm like, I hope people realize that you can click and there's information literally everywhere within the booth. So there's just a lot that you can really find out. And then with the chat function, and to be clear, the chat is, there's the written chat. So if you just want to converse with someone and type in a question, it can be very basic, or it can be an elaborate. I know last year we had some really long chat conversations with different people. And at some point we were like, why don't you just hop in our Zoom room and, it'll be a little bit easier for us to continue this conversation. But if you don't want to do the Zoom and just prefer to do the written chat, that's fine too. The schools have people staffing both the written chat, the Zoom rooms. So we really have tried to be very open with information and have a lot available to you as students, so you can learn as much as you can about us. Anything else that I didn't think about that we talked about yesterday?
I don't know. I think the other thing that we might want to encourage them is really to take part in the live workshops. There's some invaluable information, whether it's about, diversity questions or the admissions process, or probably, I think one used to be financing, the legal education, or what financial aid looks like. There's really good things available to you. So, if you have a chance to maybe get to the info before the event starts, I think there's the ability to do that, right? You can start making a plan, get a little organized so you kind of know where you want to go, what you think you're interested in, fit in a couple or 3 of the live workshops to make use of those, whatever's applicable, so that you can make the best use of your day. 1 to 6 sounds like a long time, but will fly when you're trying to see and connect and get info from a bunch of schools. But I would strongly encourage you to think about the live workshops. I know that students have told me they have found them very helpful. And so take advantage of that and all the other resources that, you know, Katya showed you when she was kind of poking around in the hall. I think there's a lot of good stuff there, and you can make this a really good and helpful experience. If you don't get to all the places, you know, make some notes, because again, we are all available even beyond the digital. You can contact our offices or our schools and talk to whomever, you know, you'd like to, mostly. And so, you know, take advantage of not tomorrow, Friday, a week Friday. But then also, if you can't get to all the places that you want, just make some notes and come visit us in another format. So it'll be fun.
So, Ms. Rhymes-Boyd, let's say we've got our students here and they've seen all of this. How do we get them prepared? We used to do something, you know, I have a list of questions. If you're going to a live forum, here's how to get the most out of it. So how do you advise your students how to get the most out of our virtual forum?
I am happy to chat about that. Let me take a second, everyone, and share my screen with you. Can you all see that? Perfect. So I'm just going to give a caveat and say to everyone who's on here that I am really big about preparation and being organized, because then you can just have an idea of how you're going into an event. And of course, unexpected things can happen, your technology, questions you haven't thought about. But if you've at least planned in some sense what you want to do, then you go into it much more confident. So I want to chat with you about what I say to the law school aspirants that I meet with at our school. First, I just kind of say, why don't you start thinking about a list of schools that you might like to speak with? And then compare that with the list of participants. As you saw, LSAC does provide that list of those who will be present at the virtual LSAC forum. So you can kind of get a list if the schools that you're interested in will indeed be there. And I know in most cases, the majority of the law schools are present. But go ahead and kind of start with making a list. You can have a spreadsheet if you want. I also advise to try to do a little bit of research ahead of time. You don't want to ask questions about their median LSAT scores or their GPA when that's so easily found. And I like to think of people who are attorneys as the first line of readers, first line of researchers. So let's go ahead and start using some of those chops and making sure that we're finding that information. We want to ask a little bit more higher level questions about things that you may not be able to easily discern. Because of the fact that these events are available as virtual, it's really an invaluable opportunity for you to meet folks, find out bits and pieces about culture, and not have to travel. So I really want students to take advantage of this. And that's why I advise that you just kind of do a few little things ahead of time. Also mentioning in this, as you're doing the research, I know many pre-law advisors have access to the 2020-2021 Stern and Wilson Book of Lists, which is a great resource. So whenever I meet with students, I definitely shoot that out and send it to them so that they can learn a little bit more information about the schools, about programs, and the focuses that are available, including joint degree programs. I will try to share it if it hasn't been on the chat so folks can download it, because as I do virtual appointments, that's definitely something that I share. But just kind of see what programs, it can kind of help you narrow down if you have any idea whatsoever what your focus may be when you go to law school. You don't have to know, but some people definitely have some ideas of areas they may be interested in. So I say, let's go ahead and start talking to some of those law schools and finding out a bit more about the programs that they do have. Start to make a list of questions, and it doesn't have to be huge, but figure out what you're interested in. You may want to learn more about their financial aid, the cost and scholarships, whether or not The majority of the scholarships that they provide are regular, or if they're conditional or contingent upon a certain GPA in order for you to keep that scholarship. What are their participation numbers in experiential learning activities like moot court and so forth? And then also looking at what is the ability of that law school? What are they doing to connect with the larger community, and how will you be able to build your network? I'll give you some examples of questions as we move along. You also want to familiarize yourself with the platform. So you know that once you have signed up, you can go in and you can take a look. So just go in and view view the videos that are online, look at the FAQs on the LSAC website. It gives you wonderful information about what you can expect, as well as going online and actually looking at the platform itself. I like to say that I would like for my students to just prepare their clothing in case they want to jump in on a Zoom. It doesn't mean you have to be fancy. It really needs to just be this portion, but business casual, not a suit, just business casual would be fine. But I think it's helpful, as Dean Kramer was saying, to actually turn on your camera so they can see your face, so that you become a little bit more memorable to them and the questions that you've asked and how you've interacted with them, because your face, your name will also go in that application, and it would be wonderful if they make some sort of connection to the interaction that you had with them while in the LSAC forum. And then kind of prepare for any questions they may ask you. So if they ask you, why do you want to go to law school? Why are you interested in their particular law school? You know, have reasons for it. So that's why doing a little bit of background in terms of knowing some schools you may be interested in can be helpful. If you know why you were looking at that school, you know what programs may be of interest to you, and you can engage on a deeper level with representatives who are there. So what kind of questions can you consider? There are a whole host of questions out there, but I'm going to give you some examples of things that I talk about with students as I advise them in general as they have conversations with law schools. So I think it's important to know, what kind of support does the law school have for 1Ls, for first year students? Each school is going to have their own sort of program. They're going to have their own method. You are, of course, going to go into different sections, but beyond that, what's available? Are there planned dinners with the faculty members? How often do they occur? What can they share with you about how you'll be able to easily meld into the culture and feel at home at that law school? Ask them perhaps for some examples about events with the surrounding legal community that students can expect. I remember even during my first year of law school going to receptions at different law firms, and that was a way to start building connections, building your network, learning a bit more about practice areas and so forth. And then also there are events that just were generally shared. You know, so what could you possibly expect during that first year as you're starting, and for that community as a whole? Housing, where do the majority of students live? Do they live on campus, off campus? Is there affordable housing nearby? Are there opportunities for you to share requests for housing and find roommates? What can they tell you about that? If it's a large city, what can they tell you about campus security and about any crime stats on campus? That's going to be a concern for some folks. I know I was from a very small town, so when I moved to DC, it was very important for me to know, what can I expect? Oh, there are regular patrols, just generic things for you to know, just to feel a little bit more at home as you're considering these big decisions. Now, what's the bar passage rate for students in the states where the majority of them take the bar? Ultimately, you are going to have to pass your bar exam in order to practice. So you want to know how well they're doing at educating the students. And of course, most people take bar prep courses, but you get your foundations in terms of how to think through theory in the law through the law school experience that you have. So how are the majority of the students at this law school prepared? And then we want to think about things like, how are students supported in their career searches beyond the on-campus interviews and recruitment? And are there other options? If you're not interested in working at a firm, You want to go into public interest law, you want to go into government, what may be available there if that is your niche and that's what you're thinking about for the future. That may be something that you want to inquire about a little bit more. And then clinics, that's one of those experiential learning opportunities. What are they like? Do they have any for 1Ls? That's not for every 1L, but you may want to find out if there are opportunities on the off chance that it's something that you might be interested in. And what percentage of students in general for that campus participate in clinics who are getting that practical experience? Clinics are an opportunity to get a practical experience of working with the law in some form or fashion, and are usually around different areas of the law. So I know you may not be aware of what that language is. And then also looking at overall, what percentage of students are participating in clinics, in moot court, which is practice appellate court arguments, mock trials, journals, and how many students also participate in summer associate programs. These are things that are going to give you experiences that will make you more marketable for when you are looking for those jobs. So it's important to know what's being offered in terms of those opportunities. And then of course, diversity may be one of those issues. What does diversity look like at that particular law school? And that would include race, sexual orientation, neurodiversity, age, ability. How are these communities supported? You may be a part of one or many, but what can you expect if you happen to, if you're going to law school and you need some assistance in some way, maybe you need a little bit more help with academic support in some way, what can you expect? How will you be able to build community and feel included amongst everyone who's there? Now, of course, these are not all the questions you could possibly ask, but I wanted to provide some of the things that I talk about with students because I think it's important for you to start thinking about the larger picture of what this community will be like for you and thinking about those bigger questions that really are impactful for you. You're spending 3 years in this environment, in this bubble where you're learning in an intense manner. And when you leave there, you'll be changed. You want it to be as positive as it possibly can be. You want to be as supported as you can, but knowing that it's going to be rigorous as well. So moving on from there, how are you going to navigate the event? Well, you heard a lot of great information, and fortunately, we're able to see the platform from Katya. So thank you so much for that. I would say log in early. Make sure you're perusing the resources that are available. There's no harm in just being an early bird. Also, just consider the law schools that you want to visit with, both their booth and their Zoom times. As Dean Cassiano just mentioned, they will have different people who are slotted in. So you really may want to look at it and say like, oh gosh, at this certain time, I really would like to speak to the student. I'd like to speak to the dean here. And so you can really look at your time and make sure that it's working out well for you, and looking at that in concert with the workshops that are available, making comparisons and smart decisions about, oh, I want to do the workshop that's live, or I can do this workshop that's on demand. And those are the kind of things that you kind of want to think about there so that you can maximize what you can do. Of course, you can go to another virtual LSAC forum at another time, yes. But if you are trying to apply to law school during this fall, it may be that you really need to meet certain representatives from certain schools and find out certain bits and pieces of information. Make note of the names of the individuals who are representatives of each school so you can address them properly. You don't want to just say Ms. Cassiano instead of Dean Cassiano, Dean Kramer. You want to make sure that you're addressing them properly and that you're remembering. Of course, add those view books and other information to your swag bag, as has been mentioned many times, so that you can view them later. And if you are using the Stern-Wilson Book of Lists, you can kind of compare any updates of information that the school has provided you versus what may be in the book that's included. notes. I think it's important that as you're asking these questions that you remember the answers. And a lot of times people get so caught up in asking the questions or listening to someone else ask a question and hearing a great answer that they don't remember what was said. So make sure that you're just kind of taking some notes and that you're also using impressions, getting some impressions there, glean what you can of the culture of the institution. That's one of the most important things that I find, not just knowing here's the program, but the personalities of the individuals that you're working with. You may think like, oh, well, everyone is going to be great and kind. Yes, but we don't all vibe with everyone. And I do believe that the folks that you meet from the different schools are pretty indicative of what you can probably expect from the school. Each school has a culture. So like the friendliness, the openness that you get from them, I think it is a little bit indicative there. That has been my experience both as a law student in the past and then working as pre-law advisor. So you want to find out what it is. Do you feel like you're vibing with them? People tend to hire those who are similar. So you probably get more folks who are similar to that in the institution as a whole. But what should you do after the event? Review those notes. See what your thoughts are. Are you still thinking about the same schools? Consider if you have other questions that you may want to reach out to them about. And then of course, reach out to the person or persons that you spoke with and, ask for any additional clarifications for those questions that you may have. And of course, send a thank you if you've had a substantive engagement with someone, you have really good conversation, you feel like they'll definitely remember you, go ahead and send that thank you note. And I also just kind of want to go back and say, even though you may have the list of schools, don't be afraid to veer off and look at other schools. It's just to have something as a guiding point so that you know, okay, I did want to speak to these people at these schools for their programs, but then be open to everything else. The law school that I ended up going to was just one that I was saying, oh, I'm going to chat with multiple law schools. And of course, this was back in person. But I was looking at different areas of the country and I wasn't sure of where I was going to be. So I ended up going to a school that I was like, oh, maybe I will actually go to this area of the country. So definitely explore, listen with your active ears so that you can ask good questions, take those notes, and then go back and regroup and see where you're going to go and meet with your pre-law advisors on your campus and talk through your impressions and your thoughts. I'm happy to answer any questions. I know that's a lot, didn't have a lot of information, but I'm really excited to be here.
Thank you so much. That was fantastic, very thorough. And I know you felt like you crammed a lot into a very small period of time. So this makes me think of a good question as we go back to Katya about this. If I'm one of the students, I'm thinking, this all sounds a little overwhelming. What's it going to be like at the point of contact? When I get to the law school and I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, do I chat? Do I Zoom? How do I engage? And then the other question I have is we're talking about, very popular law schools. Are there lines? Do you have to wait sometimes to engage with the people at particular schools?
So those are great questions, and I'm going to give you all a very lawyer answer, and it's going to be, it depends. I think the way different students will approach diving into a conversation is going to be different for everybody. Flashing back to last year and putting an admissions hat on just for a second, there were definitely people that we could tell were maybe in the background for a bit, watching the chat or in the Zoom room, but not participating right away. That was totally fine. And my colleagues can jump in if they have a different viewpoint, but we saw that in at-person forums too, right? Someone would sort of linger near the table and listen for a little bit, warm up, maybe just collect some basic information. In terms of waiting, there sometimes is a wait, you know, if a school has a lot of people in the chat or in their Zoom, you may not be able to jump in and start speaking right away. But we in this profession are very skilled at trying to involve as many people in the conversation as possible. So definitely wait your turn. You can always send the messages through the Zoom chat also if you're in the room. You can get people's emails addresses if you want to ask a couple basic questions and follow up with a more in-depth conversation later. Remember, this is potentially just your first opportunity to connect with admissions representatives. So you can continue the conversation after the event. I think it's totally common for a lot of people to get to their first booth, watch the videos, maybe look through the brochures and the documents that are available, check out the different links, and then warm up to the specific individuals manning a booth by monitoring what's going on in the chat, scrolling through and seeing what has maybe been asked and answered already, hopping into the Zoom room and maybe getting a feel for what's going on. I cannot agree more with the comments about vibing with people. You will get a sense, I think, just as an observer, if there's a conversation you want to jump in on. And then the advice I want to give all of you, if you're hesitant about speaking up, think of this as the first opportunity to advocate for yourself. You are your first law client. You're in front of people who are experts on the subject matter, and their job is literally to help you make the process as smooth as possible. So don't be afraid to jump in, whether you start with just a chat to somebody who's in the chat through the booth, or with jumping into a Zoom meeting, maybe with a professor or a dean or some of the current students or admissions professionals. You know, there's not a countdown clock. You can take as long as you want in that first booth to figure out what your opening move is going to be. And I don't know if Dean Kramer or Dean Castellano have anything to add with what they see when people approach them in the booth.
Well, and I know for us last year, it just depended on how many people we had in our Zoom waiting room. At some point, we opened it up and we just started admitting people and saying, you know, we're pretty confident you all may have similar questions. And if that's okay, we'll talk with you all as a group. And I think the answer of whether to chat or to Zoom is maybe it just kind of, it depends on your question, right? So I know we had some people just jump on and be like, do you have this program? And if it was a yes, then they might engage further. And if it was a no, then they had already kind of thought, you know, oh no, you don't have what I'm looking for. And so that may be one way to sort of discern where you are. And if it's at the point where you're like, I want to just talk with everybody, that's okay too. So
I think one thing that's helpful, as Katya mentioned, is, you know, maybe when you're joining, you can see the chats. And again, many of you often share the same questions. So, you know, monitor the chat that's already been, you know, going on to see if that has already been answered. I know sometimes I was sort of frustrated because I was trying to, you know, attend to everyone. And I thought, well, that's already been asked. If they just went 2 more bars up, they would already know the answer to that. Not that I didn't mind repeating myself, because I have to do it a lot. But when you're a discerning, you know, participant, you can say, okay, let me just check this. It might be a question lots of people have. I can find the answer. And then it saves you your a chance to ask something more important or, you know, that hasn't been chatted about yet before you got there.
So a question I have is there any possibility within the forum framework to have private conversation? Or is it better for students to wait if they want to speak to you privately, to email you, engage with you after the forum?
So I'm going to give that answer again. It depends. I know a lot of schools, as Dean Cassiano said, will have the waiting room engaged for as long as they can, or they'll hop into breakout rooms with particular students, or there'll be other ways in which you can have a one-on-one chat. You can actually hop into a private chat. So there's the common room where you can have conversations with numerous people. It is possible to directly message a representative of the booth. So that is a private conversation. So that is a possibility in terms of either starting a conversation or trying to arrange an opportunity to talk later. I know last year I scheduled a lot of follow-up appointments with that private chat feature. Again, it's, the most common lawyer answer. It's going to depend on the different setups that each of the schools have chosen to do in their booths. But universally across the board, there is the option for that direct messaging, which is a private one-on-one chat.
Dean Kramer, Dean Castellano, how do you all feel about that? Is it best to, have maybe a brief private conversation and then connect later since it's a busy day? Or do you prefer having the private conversation at that point if that's what the students want?
If it's manageable, I'm happy to do it at the time. If it happens to, these things peak and valley a little bit. And sometimes when you're in a peak, you don't want to be disrespectful of all the other people that might be waiting. And so you have to kind of monitor your time a little bit. So, if somebody hops on at one of those peaks, you may have to say, listen, it looks like we're being slammed a little bit. Can we take this? As Katya said, can we make an appointment to talk about it later? Or maybe you could come back and whatever, kind of works. But I think I would try to be available at that moment. So to be more convenient for people. But if we happen to be in some weird peak thing, and then I can't get to everybody, then we may have to, as we like to say nowadays, pivot and do it another way.
I would agree, but I do know some colleagues last year disabled the private chat option. So I know some people had already anticipated being overwhelmed and not wanting that separate. I don't know if that's an option this year with the booths, but I know last year some of the law schools were able to opt in for that. So
I'm waiting to see some questions, and I haven't seen them yet, but I always loved from this particular group to hear the don't side of it. We've heard a great thing from Ms. Rimes-Boyd about here are the things to do. Does each of you have a here's a don't do?
I can start. Don't forget to register today if you want to go on Friday, because today is the deadline to register for the forum on the 10th. So don't miss out on your chance to attend.
Don't be rude. Don't be rude. There are some people who think about law school and they think that they need to be extra assertive, perhaps cocky, but just as you can bring negative attention to yourself if you are interrupting other people who are asking questions and so forth. So don't be rude, mind your manners. You can still get your question answered.
And I thought of one. Don't assume that the only person that knows the answer to the question is the Dean of Admissions. Because if I've done my job right, I have trained anybody in my booth to be able to help. And so sometimes I can't be available to every single person or be on the thing the whole time because, you have to eat or go to the loo or something like that. So, but I promise you that the director of admissions or the two students that are going to be on, which are actually two alum, we have adequately trained them. And nobody's going to say to you on that Friday, by gosh, you're admitted. Not even the Dean of Admissions on a Zoom call is going to be able to say that to you. So this is an information gathering process, not a decision-making process. I guess unless, as Lady Stacy points out, unless you're not very nice. And then we may remember your name for not a good reason. But, think about the fact that we have the people in the booth who are super qualified. And so if for some reason the person that you think that you wanted to chat with isn't available at that moment, either find a time at a later date that they might be available to talk to you, or take advantage of anybody else in the booth, because I bet Catherine, like I have made sure that our folks know the answers to stuff, and they won't make it up. If they don't, they would defer to somebody who they know can answer the question. So don't feel slighted or disappointed if you don't feel that you're not talking to a decision maker.
I think my only note with the Zoom is try not to have distractions if possible. I mean, I know it happens, but trying to manage that to the best of your ability. I mean, I have 2 crazy dogs that are super unpredictable, and so sometimes they're in, I have to put them in different places in my house to arrange that. But and same with my kids. I have crazy kids. So, but still just trying to do kind of the best you can, especially if it is something that we're having a difficulty. I know that it happens, right? Difficulty trying to converse over Zoom. And so at least being prepared, and that is part of the preparation process to some degree. But we also understand things happen too. So
I have met more cats over Zoom and Teams. It seems like when you're having a conversation, people's cats always want to be like right up front in there. I'm going to make a pitch for pre-law advisors. Your own personal pre-law advisor like me, it might not be on there when you need to talk, but if you come up with a question that's a general kind of pre-law question, don't hesitate to go to click on the pre-law advisement section, and one of the pre-law advisors who's volunteered will be able to answer your generalized questions at that point. You can always come back, when you hit home base, but sometimes you just need a pre-law advisor. It's kind of like, is there a doctor in the house? And so, know that that's, and then I'm going to say, I'm always telling my students, and you can see it here, it's a smaller world than you think it is. Pre-law advisors, deans of admissions, LSAC ambassadors, and program directors, and so forth. So be on your best behavior, because we all know each other, and if you meet with someone, that they might be likely not just to remember you, but remember what school you're from, and so forth. So be on your best behavior. Okay, do we have any questions from anyone who's out there listening? I'm not seeing any in the chat.
I know somebody wanted Lady Stacy's PowerPoints.
And it is in the chat. She has posted it there.
Thank you.
Hi,
Thank you
Michelle.
for doing this. Hi.
Yes, we also have a link here from Anna of the Stern Wilson Book of Law school lists. So students will also have a link to that. We are recording this, and the recording is going to be posted. My technical abilities, though, make me not sure how that's going to happen. I believe it is going to happen through the SWAPLA website, which is swapla.org, SWAPLA. So when you're looking for that, come to our website. Oh, here's a question. This is kind of a general one that doesn't have anything to do with the forum, but we might as well throw it out there. Riley asked, how did y'all go about getting internships during college and finding your niche in the law, so to speak? I'll tell you all right off the bat, I didn't find my niche in law as an undergraduate. I didn't find my niche in law until after I got into law school. And I don't think that's a good idea anymore. I think it's better to have some kind of idea. Anybody else? How did you find your niche in the law?
through the classes that I took my first year, when I graduated, I was a criminal defense attorney for a number of years. And so that really was fostered through the first year of law school when I took criminal law, and I absolutely loved it. I didn't do any legal type of internships during college. And in fact, I took 6 years off between college and law schools to try different things. But but something about the power of a law degree being able to help people in ways that there's not so many professions that allow you to do what you can do with a law degree. So that's what continually would draw me back, was that is what I want to do. I want to help people. And so law school just seemed like the best way to do that. So I found mine in law school.
I actually didn't find my niche through an internship. I was a nanny for a family with 3 children with autism, and being a part of their lives for the 4 years I was in school got me really passionate about child advocacy. So I applied to schools with child advocacy programs. So it's not always an internship or something professional that will spark an interest that leads you down your path in law school. And I'm obviously not practicing anymore, but I am on a board of trustees for a school here in New Jersey for students with severe special needs and learning disabilities. So I am still involved in the community I wanted to be a part of, even though I'm not practicing.
So I see this as a 2-part question. For me, one part of it is, how do you just have an interest in law? And for me personally, I did do internships while I was in college. I went to undergrad at Baylor, and I did an internship at Heart of Texas Legal Services, and just really kind of try to figure out, like, is this something I really want to do? But I also knew that I was interested in policy work. So I did internships with the local congressman at the time when I was in college, which was Ched Edwards. And I did some student lobbying while I was on campus. So actually lobbied in Texas and in DC. So I knew going in to law school that my focus would probably be around policy with some tangential portions to criminal law. So for me, going into my first job out of law school, it was policy related with a criminal focus. And then I just basically stayed in sort of policy work while I was in DC. But I definitely say, because now I transition more into the career services side of things with this focus on pre-law advising, explore. I never tell people to think about, oh, there's just one area you may be interested in. If you have 3, that's wonderful. Let's look at all of them. Let's talk to people who are working in all of those fields. Let's shadow them. Let's do all the things. And that doesn't mean you have to go in with, like, this is the one thing, but it's better to at least have a few things rather than having no idea whatsoever. And just going through the experience. So hopefully that was helpful for you. That's what I remember.
And so I don't want to appear as avoiding the question, but I'm one of the weird animals that doesn't have a JD. So that's why I'm not answering the question about my internship and my niche in law. I would like to say, though, that I was looking at the question and it was asking internships in college to find your niche. And I don't know, I've always advocated and encouraged people to do internships, not necessarily to find their niche, because I think of all the things you've heard, it comes in a lot of ways, shapes and forms, but do an internship just to make sure that you think you like law. How many times have people gone to law school because they didn't do the research or didn't ask the questions, or, we don't all know lawyers. So, shadow someone or have an experience so that you can see what, at least in some small amount, law looks like, so that you can make sure that this is the avenue that you want to pursue. I kid you not, a young man went to all the trouble of applying to law school, and he started this fall. And as he began taking classes and as he began hearing about how hard law school is and actually how complicated the profession is itself, he withdrew. And he said, I suddenly realized that the way you learn in law school and the profession itself is not something I'm suited for. And part of me was happy that he had come to this conclusion very early in his law school experience, so that he wasn't so far in debt and committed to it that he had to keep going or felt like he did. But I wonder if he'd taken the time, to do a little bit more research and understanding about these things that he suddenly realized didn't fit his personality very well, if he might have made a different choice. And so I would just encourage you to be thinking about, do I know what law looks like? I better ask and understand so that when I make this commitment to take this darn LSAT and go through this whole process, that I'm committed and understand and excited about it when I get all my admissions offers and I get to figure out where I'm going.
Can I also add that being in San Antonio and having the wonderful ability of having a law school right here in the same city, at least pre-COVID, I would oftentimes just say to students, okay, well, have you looked at St. Mary's? You should consider reaching out and finding out if you can do a visit. They're local right here. You can ask if you can sit in on a class and just have a better understanding of the experiences. And most law schools, at least pre-COVID, would offer that. So regardless of where you want to attend, if you're thinking about South Texas, if you're thinking University of Houston, if you're thinking of UT, Texas Law, wherever, utilize those opportunities when they have open houses, when those come again, to also get a sense of, well, this is what the experience will be like, because if you don't like to be cold called on and maybe not know the answer, it might not be the place for you. If you're not ready to pose a challenge and engage in that intellectual discussion, and maybe you're right, maybe you're wrong, maybe the answer falls somewhere in between, then you need to consider whether or not you can make it through the journey to get to the other side. And are you prepared for what happens on the other side as well?
Thank you. Very, very, very good. While we've got folks on talking about what this next admission cycle is going to be looking like, I think one of the things is that there probably still are a lot of opportunities with each law school to do some kind of virtual tour, virtual course, classes, something like that. Is that true at your schools?
I just put a shameless plug in the chat. I'll not lie.
Excellent. And I gave you such a great segue for it.
You did not. I don't feel as awful.
Yeah.
But yes, I'm super excited. We are welcoming people to campus to sit in on a class, take a tour with the student ambassador, or do those sorts of things. If people aren't comfortable, I will Zoom with people. But since we are not hybrid and we're not doing Zoom in the classroom, that's not really a possibility. But I certainly can chat with people. There's virtual tours on the website if that's more comfortable. But we're wearing masks and we're coming into the building and we're sitting in class and taking tours and doing all of those things that we happily used to do, even if I can only see this much of you. So yes. And
a student is asking if you can put a link in there for the open house.
Oh, yes, I was getting to that, but then you called me out. I'm just kidding.
Dean Cassiano is also saying they're having an open house
See?
on the 16th. So either I would say for students, if you don't see links here to the open house, please just go to the website. This is the first tool that you need for schools that you're interested in. You have to go look at their website. You want to answer these questions. What kind of clinic programs do they have? Do they have any specializations? How many letters of recommendation do they want? So the website, go to the website.
And then I do just want to hop in as the East Coast representative of the law school admissions profession. I do just want to comment that you are all applying to law school at a really amazing time to be going through the process. So before before COVID, I think the generally accepted mentality was, well, we need to get them in front of us. They either need to see us on the road or they need to come visit us at our law schools. And because of COVID, to use the term Dean Kramer used perfectly, it applies to the situation as well. A lot of law schools and the LSAC had to pivot and invest more money into online resources than we ever had before. So most law schools, the Law School Admission Council, there are so many videos and opportunities to hear from different types of people than ever have been before. The virtual tours that Dean Kramer mentioned, virtual information sessions, there's so much more that you can do. Not only if you want to come visit an East Coast school, but Texas is a big state. So if you can't make a trip easily to a school that's on your list, I encourage you to check out that website. I second that advice wholeheartedly. See what's there, because there's more on Law School and LSAC's website as a resource that's in video format or virtual or a podcast or all sorts of things available to you now because of COVID. So the pandemic has changed the resources at your fingertips, and I personally think it's for the better.
Excellent, thank you. The pandemic has changed the applications as well. So Katya, we have a big increase in applications this year, correct?
Well, most applications have only been open for maybe 7 days.
I was talking about
So-
last cycle.
Oh,
sorry.
yes. Sorry. We've already packed up last year. Yes, last year there was a great big increase in applications, and I think Dean Kramer and Dean Cassiano felt the brunt of that a little more, probably a lot more than I did since I left the profession on the admission side at the end of November. So yes, last year was a wild year for many, many reasons.
So if I might say this for all of my law school friends, when your pre-law advisor says apply early, you really should do it this time. Apply early. And I see nodding of heads. Apply. Objects in mirror closer than they appear.
Or at least not like the week of orientation. Like we had a lot of people apply this year, and I'm like, we've been full since April. I'm sorry. So I do think there's late and then there's really late. So just be mindful of deadlines.
Yeah, and as the I say quality of the pool, I'm going to rephrase that because there's so much more to the quality than LSAT and GPA, but the metrics, the LSATs and GPAs also were exponentially improved. And so waiting to apply often meant not only were seats already taken, but scholarship dollars were accounted for as well. So apply early and often.
And I think that segues us right back to where we are, which is get started now by going to an LSAC forum. Do your preparation. Make your list of law schools you want to visit. Have those intelligent questions. Be ready to make a good impression. Gather that information. And then you'll be ready to go. I see we had another plug, and that is our next SWAPLA September seminar is going to be more on this type of topic. It's called Demystifying the Law School Admissions Process. And our panel at that point in time of Deans of Admissions and associates and friends and colleagues will be talking about, everything about the application process, getting your application in. So, be sure to join us again on the 22nd, and then the 29th, we will be having our maximizing the softs, which will be about resumes, letters of recommendation, personal statements, getting those kinds of applications in. So we did have this question, what is considered early? And Anna answered it, I ideally apply before Thanksgiving, but you may apply in December. What do our two law school admissions people think early is?
I have a priority deadline of, when is my priority deadline? February something. I changed it. Now I'm gone blank. Since South Texas offers admissions to students in the spring and in the fall, until about January, when we return for the semester, I am very occupied admitting and enrolling and bringing in that cohort in the spring. And so the application certainly is available in late November, early December, which is fine. But since we are primarily faculty driven in our admissions committee process, some of the decisions may go out in December, start going out. not all of them, obviously. But a lot of them will then start in January when we return for the semester. So early to me is applying by the priority deadline that's on our website. And not only is that a good idea for decision reasons, but you also get a fee waiver. So there's that.
And for us, our priority deadline is November 11th. And that's just to kind of help space out the number of applications, because we tend to get a deluge in February, and then that does delay some decisions. So we really are trying to encourage people to use the priority deadline to have a decision earlier. And then our regular deadline is March 1st.
Okay. All right. I think it's time for thank yous to everyone. I think this has just been a really informative session. I enjoyed moderating it so much. Katya, thank you for the great graphics you brought us. I think it'll really help our students when they, get on. And I hope everyone has a wonderful time on Friday trying to navigate the forum and get the most out of it that you can. Check SWAPLA.org if you're looking for the recording of this, or talk to your pre-law advisor and say, how can you get me that recording? Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you. Have a good one.
Look, there's Wendy.